welcome back to a new episode of Our Banter. And I'm sitting here with...
Sienna.
And Zhamilya.
And I'm Timo, of course. So, in today's episode, we're going to talk about one of our articles coming out in our magazine about gendered spaces. But before that, we're going to talk about the budget cuts and specifically the idea of merging faculties. There was an article in Ukraine that came out a couple of days before recording about that the merging will be postponed until February. And this means, of course, a new situation for the whole discussion.
They're just going to keep pushing it back, most likely, until it just does happen eventually.
Will it happen?
Well, we don't know, because the university board, they haven't released their intended decision yet, and they were supposed to last week, and now they won't until spring. But even when they do release their intended decision, the whole university council has to vote on it. Mm-hmm. And likely it won't be passed the first time they vote on it, because especially the student side, the student factions are almost all against it, and most of the faculties too. But they're probably going to keep pushing this, or maybe not mergers directly, but something similar until it does get passed, because the university board wants it to happen.
Because as far as I understood it, they're now postponing to February because there was not enough support. And they're going to look for more support.
There's also just not a lot of clarity. They're kind of we want to merge. This is who we want to merge.
I've talked to a couple of SOC people, and what they said, you read the report and it says, we're going to merge, it's going to save us this much money, but they never say where that money is going to come from, and they're all saying we are not going to fire anyone, because if they fire, they need to talk to the unions, and they don't want to talk to the unions. But then again,
people would have to be fired.
That's the biggest cost.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I just feel especially for spatial sciences, because they want to merge us either with BSS or FEB, and FEB is
that doesn't make sense.
What the only line that I think that you can draw in content between us and FEB is that we have the economic geography master and they have economics. That's the only thing where I'm that's it.
Real estate.
Right, those economic geography and real estate. But that's one of the 7 masters. And then all the bachelors are not connected at all. So in my opinion, it makes more sense to merge with BSS. But they also merged in the past, because it used to be sociology and psychology separate, and they merged. And they have mentioned that they still have issues of cohesion, and this was 15 years ago or something. So also just generally, I think everyone knows that our faculty council at FSS is strongly against it, because we don't see any benefit for literally anyone. So yeah.
I think there was a really nice article in Ukraine about this, where they did talk to FSS, religion and philosophy, and they were all this just doesn't work.
Well, we just as faculty councils, there has been no straightforward statement of how this is going to benefit our faculty. They've said oh, this is going to help the university cut costs and and be more dynamic and efficient. But they don't tell us, okay, but how is this going to help us? Of course, we want to be more economic and dynamic and all of these things, but that can be achieved in other ways without our faculty disappearing. Also because for us, the university is seeing declines in enrollment over the last 2 years.
I wonder why.
And our enrollment has actually stayed the same and slightly increased this year, our faculty specifically, which is contrary, none of the other faculties have seen an increase in enrollment, basically, so... then it's we're clearly doing something right. Why would you mess that up?
Yeah, and also I think our faculty really mentions this, but we're the only spatial science faculty in the whole of the Netherlands.
In all of Europe.
In all of Europe, even.
Yep. And as me personally, that's why I chose this program over University of Amsterdam, is because it's its own faculty. That obviously means something. Yeah. And they also state students will feel no difference if we were to merge, which it's impossible to believe. Of course that we would feel a difference if we're one day in one faculty and then in a different faculty, but also for the student organizations and associations, there would have to be something changed, because if nothing changes, then there's no point. Then it's not merged. So yeah, I don't know. There's just.
I think we can with this say that Our Banter takes a stance against the mergers, together with the rest of FSS and the rest of most people at the union, at the medium and small size faculties. So our main topic today is going to be one of the articles you can read on our website, made by our editorial team. about gendered spaces. And Zhamilya, can you talk more about your article? Like what do you mean with gendered spaces?
I initially phrased this as gendered urban experience, so more about like, okay, so at the article, I end up talking about woman experience at night, walking, kind of guiding the city. But initially, I was planning on just talking in general about like vulnerable population, I would say. Like, it's hard to phrase it. It was initially my struggle, because it's hard to phrase it in a way that you don't hate on certain people and you don't like, because I kind of want to include not only women but also like queer people or ethnic minorities, so kind of make it inclusive, but at the same time to not diminish women's experience by mixing all together, so not creating this duality between men and women necessarily, but also not like, you know, making a melting pot for everyone, if that makes sense.
I feel like the overarching idea is that people experience urban spaces differently depending on their demographic characteristics.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
You did it very well. But yeah, this is the
but specifically at night then.
Yeah. So for me, I refer to the time and space and how it, depending on a context, may be accepted and perceived differently.
Because you used the example of like a woman walking at night, and the feelings and the situation that you find yourself in there, which I think is a really good example of how our urban spaces are very much not made for everyone.
Yeah, and it's so common, like every day. Like it's, I don't know, like for me while I was writing it, I was like, I bet every, like at least every woman that I know will relate to that. Every person has to, like, and that's the thing, because like I sent this to multiple of my friends at first, and I sent it to straight cis male friend, and I sent it to my woman friend, like one of the friends, whatever. Basically, the point is, for her, it was like, oh yeah, but like you sound repetitive, you know, it's like we all know that about that. And my like male friend, he was like, oh, actually, I would like if you elaborate about that more. So it also kind of, you know, I forgot the word for that, but basically there's like dynamics, like inequality in power dynamics, and how like for women it's so familiar experience, but for men it's something that is not that frequently experienced.
This comes close to my experience with reading Feminist City, which is a book which talks about feminist urban design and planning, where I know one of the reviews was, oh, this book is really boring because it kind of just talks about what everybody knows.
Yeah, and exactly, right?
It's about harassment. It's about how women live in cities. And then as maybe a man, you're like, this is all new to me.
Yeah.
But then as a woman, it's like, this is really boring. What do you mean? This is just, everybody does this. Everybody knows.
No, and I've had like similar conversations to this, with many different people, but I think kind of the baseline of it is that there's just so many things that in certain spaces women have to consider, that those thoughts just would never even cross the mind of a man. Even if I feel 100% safe walking alone somewhere, I'm gonna have that thought, oh, okay, I feel safe walking here, this is good. And I think like the fact that I even had to consider that, in most spaces, a lot of men would never even have the thought of whether or not they feel safe in that space. Like it's it just wouldn't cross your mind. It's not as likely to cross your mind.
Yeah, and actually, I'm really happy that we brought it out together, so we have like a kind of diverse perspective on that. Because basically, all the, like I also mentioned in my article, how phrases like, oh, get home safe, or don't walk alone at night, are targeted directly to women most of the times. And I mean, it kind of sounds weird if, you know, like we're together and I'll be like, Timo, you know, write me, be safe home. Like, it's of course like caring thought, but still like the probability that you will receive it is so much less. And I think it's also kind of implies and normalizes how women cannot be at night alone, if that makes sense. And also like I kind of, in the beginning I mentioned like, oh, you get away with it. So it sounds like you did something wrong, like it's kind of like a crime thing, like you are out at night alone. You're not supposed to be. That's not your place. Of course, it's exaggerated. I'm not referring to every experience, but most of the times, that's how I feel at least. It's like at the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. I have to get home as soon as possible, or like to another destination.
I think that's an interesting way to look at it. Like, and like, I think I slightly agree. Like this in-between state between being at the party and being home, and that this in-between state is kind of like, I'm not supposed to be here. I need to get home as quickly as possible.
I feel like describing it in that way of like it's like, I mean, obviously a little bit, like you said, it's a bit of a exaggeration, but as a bit of like a crime or a taboo, I think you mentioned in your article as well, of like, I'm not supposed to be here. It is, I think it's a little far of a reach, but it very much, I think, makes sense as a very extreme way to describe it. Like, yeah, that is to the feeling sometimes.
Yeah, and also like, you know, it's important to consider my background because I didn't live in Europe most of my life. I grew up in Kazakhstan, and like Astana is really car oriented, and like again, pedestrians barely pass the night, and like that's why like till 18 I was not like unconsciously I was not allowed to be out at night after the sunset. So I was like, my parents would be concerned, everyone would be concerned. They have to make sure that I'm with someone, like any of my male friends have to be around me, and like to be out in the concert. Only if my brothers will come with me, only like if my parents make sure that I am with someone. And like, it's so like, you don't think about it much because your mobility is so restricted and it's so
ingrained in society.
It's just like, please, can we do something with this? It's so painful.
I guess my experience is very different.
Tell us your experience.
Yeah.
Tell us my experience.
Growing up in Sweden as a little Dutch boy.
As a little Dutch boy in Sweden, in countryside Sweden. I think there it was more like, of course, as a guy, it's just like, yeah, I'm just biking home. And of course, it's countryside, so you're at some point you're just alone in fields. I think that could be interesting, like the differences between rural and city.
Yeah.
But I guess the question I do have is, would you feel safer in a city street? So going on Nieuwe Ebbingenstraat, or would you feel alone in the forest or like alone on a big field?
No. I feel like you're afraid of who is in that forest. Like in my head,
you're
it's
afraid of what could be in the darkness.
What could be there. So like I would feel safer in the city, even though at least I know people are there, you know?
Yeah. I guess the difference is like, this is different between being alone, completely alone in a field, or being in a city where there are some people around, but like maybe 5 people.
I mean, city is still safer, I would say. Because like at least it's man-made. I don't know, like at least you know the streets more or less. You know how to like where to go, like where to turn. And also like lighting more or less. I feel like here especially, like I don't feel that in danger because most of the, especially in the city center, at least also like this is what I wanted to discuss. Some of my friends told me how, did you see the like Dutch houses, how even the like the small like the shops, like the residential buildings are kind of above the shops. So it kind of secures the shop so no one gonna rob it. Plus there's always people watching from their windows because, you know, it's so... And even like that's also what I mentioned. You feel watched, so you feel like there's someone, like you can scream and someone will probably hear you and come out. You know.
Yeah, I feel like the worst from like forest, middle of nowhere to like super busy urban space. I think actually, in my opinion, the worst would be like in an urban area in a city, but like turn the corner on a street. There's just 2 guys on that street.
Ooh,
that's worse than an empty forest. I'd rather be in an empty forest at that point.
Fair.
You know, just. But then if it's a busy street, it's fine. I don't really feel like if I'm in the middle of if I'm walking on the club street or something like on a really busy night, I'm like there's 200 people walking around. I'm fine.
Yeah,
true.
I think it just ties in with the idea that urban spaces are not designed for everyone. Like you can also look at like those anti-homeless people benches that you can't lay down on, which to me is like so insane. Then I'm like, okay, build social systems that help them instead of just putting like spiky things on the benches. But I think it's just that there's no, like, is there any urban space that is actually receptive and safe for all communities, for everyone? Like, I kind of don't think so.
Yeah.
I think there's one argument which is like, if you build a city for kids, you build a city for everyone.
I can see that.
I think I can see. Of course, hey, kids don't go clubbing. So if I build a city for kids and there's no club, like
no bars,
no bars.
I don't want to go to that city.
But I think there is still something in it that kids are kind of the group that if you build for kids, it kind of automatically becomes for everyone. Like everybody could feel comfortable there.
Because most kids haven't learned like bias against other marginalized groups yet. Like, you're not born like hating a certain group of people, you know, so it is easier to appeal to everyone if you think about it from the mindset of a child. I think. But also I want to say, like, you keep referencing that you don't want to sound like a man hater or something like this, which obviously I 100% understand, but it's also like you can't ignore the fact like that it's not man versus woman.
Yeah, it is a
but
system.
It's man versus society.
It's 90% of the situations happen to be that. So it is very much like you have to reference it if you're talking about a topic like this, because that's just unfortunately most of the cases are man versus woman. Like that's not how anybody wants it to be. But
yeah, I do agree, and that's the thing. Like again, my perspective was like, so with my article, I want to bring this up so this like again ignorant men or like someone who don't even think about it, they don't feel attacked and they don't want to fight. Again, there's no duality of women against men, but more like, oh, this is a problem, I have to think about it more. So I want to like deliver it so we actually not educate them, but like make them more aware about what's happening in the world. So I don't want to like make it sound like, oh, she's like a radical feminist and like, oh, she hates, because it's totally different things.
Because I think what could be interesting is like if we look at urban planning and spatial planning and we take this concept of like of feminism, like how would a feminist urban space look like? Because it's not just man hate, it's just not saying, oh, you men go away from the street, fuck you guys.
Yes, exactly.
So
well, I think, I mean, for the context of like of safety, that doesn't have to be geared towards women, but maybe we should just be thinking more about how safe a city is after dark, having more street lighting, like these sorts of things. And that's for everyone, not just for women.
Exactly. And like even my dad, I translated the article to Kazakh and he read this, but basically he even said, oh yeah, sometimes we're also scared to walk the streets because like, again, like it's not necessarily about only women. It's also can be like people who just feel not safe on the streets. Yeah,
like a shady guy is a shady guy. Like you could still be scared of a guy standing in the dark.
Yeah.
So it's broader, but of course, if you look at the people doing it and the people they're targeting, it's
the statistics.
It
leans
back.
One way, but also to move more towards. To bring up U.S. politics like I do in every single episode.
We're turning slowly into just the United States.
I'm sorry. No, but like just talking about more maybe minority groups or like not just women as the quote like target group, but we can look now at the things going on in the U.S. with like the ICE raids and everything like that. That, I mean, I would of course assume if I'm Mexican in a more conservative region, I don't want to go outside at night or maybe at all, like, because you might just get taken or something. And then especially in more crowded areas, that's just even more likely to happen. So there's just more like external factors that are not just in the urban planning that impact the perceived safety of those spaces.
So I feel like the easiest one, well, I'm going to sound so bad now, but the easiest way to solve this is more street lamps.
I mean, it helps. It helps.
Yeah, but
like, how do we approach, like, okay, how do we change or plan a city to be more safe? Right.
But also I think we're now going into like what Le Corbusier and all that stuff, flexing my knowledge here. But what he talked about like the city changing how we are, I would argue that actually does have something. Of course, like if you build a community, people in cities are always more progressive and open-minded, and of course countryside people can also be it. As a countryside person, I'm also we're good people sometimes. So of course you can build a city around community, but do you think this would solve a problem? Or well, yes, maybe you shouldn't think about solutions.
Okay, so one of the points that I wanted to discuss about surveillance. So like again, you watch, like there are people there, but also like again, my dad was like, bring up cameras, mention about cameras, and that's how like you make like in Aston at least most of the times they put a lot of cameras, and that's how they ensure safety. And again, like I don't remember where I read this, but it was one of the readings that I did for my class, and basically they mentioned how some people would give up their freedom and privacy to gain some sort of protection. And like, in certain neighborhoods, that's why I do understand like some people, at least in my country, who are like, oh, okay, I'm safer in the places where so many cameras. Again, privacy issues and whatever, but some people are willing to give up if they're so unsafe at night, but at least there's a camera catching them and crime can be recorded and you can argue in a court about that. So again, like, it's really, ethical issue. I don't know to what extent it's a solution. I wouldn't say it's a solution, but maybe.
It does help.
Yeah.
But I think maybe also something to discuss with this, like, building community. And I mean, countrysides often have a strong community.
Yeah.
Like, your 5 people on the street, of course, will know each other.
Yeah.
Whilst we don't have this. Okay. What I want to get to at least is, like, suburbs are always shit. Because I feel like in both examples, I'm jumping now, but in the countryside, you'll have 5 people in a row in a house, like a small community, maybe 20 people. You will all know each other. So I would maybe argue that as a man, at least, you feel pretty safe because the people that would be there would be people you know.
Yeah.
And then in city, there are so many people watching. So
you're saying suburb, which is in between rural and urban. Suburban. Sorry. That's like the worst because it has neither the benefit of having a lot of people around or of you really knowing the people because it's still somewhat like spread out.
It doesn't have a community. It doesn't have surveillance. The only surveillance you have are cameras maybe.
Yeah.
Or a really angry Karen that's like trying to kick you out.
Because it also depends.
It depends, of course. Suburbs are very, like, they're in very different forms.
Yeah.
But I guess this difference in between, like, how populated it gets, and at least I would argue then that if it's really little population, the community is a lot more close-knit.
Right.
Meaning that the safety may be higher. But then in a very dense area, the safety is higher because you just have the numbers and you have the eyes.
But also, like, it's not always necessarily to the density, I think. It's also about the general infrastructure in the city. So, like, again, like, I mentioned it in my article, I mentioned the example of, like, Jane Jacobs, and, like, she's mentioned about New York City, like, Manhattan, whatever. And I think now, of course, the book was written quite a while ago, but now I don't think it's necessarily connected with the, people just cannot see you because so many, like, tall buildings and, like, people just there, but it doesn't necessarily kind of gives you a sense of security and safety. For example, again, like, I'm just amazed how some, like, the Dutch cities are planned. So, like, the windows are so big and, like, you kind of, sorry, I keep referring to this, but yeah, like, you see, I feel so safe because I know that there's I can just knock on someone's windows and probably, like, with the lights on, and the probability that they will come out is higher. And again, like, it's so much safer, at least for me, to walk here rather than to walk in a car-oriented Astana. Yeah. And again, like, I feel like here people are also more willing to help you out because, like, if you just knock on random door and say, like, oh, this man is following me, like, they will do something about it. Like, they will be more open to, like, help you out.
Like, compared to your home?
I think so. Because, like, again, it's really residential blocks. Sure.
Instead of the houses being, like, on the street.
Yeah,
like they are here. That makes sense.
They're more gated, again. Like, it's usually fenced and it's hard to get in.
Yeah. And then it's not about density, but just the availability of people and the eyes on the street, of course, but also the availability of people. I think Jean Gell also raised this in one of his books, like how you design a building and you always have, like, entrances close to people's houses. So if something happens on the street, they can always run down and be on the street in, like, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
No, well, 2 minutes is very long, but, like,
but also, like,
a minute.
To what extent, like, is it kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy where if people are like, oh, like, certain cities are deemed, oh, that's unsafe, don't go out there at night, so then people don't go out in the city at night, so then there's less people, so then it is more unsafe. You know what I mean? Like, how much does that impact it to where if people didn't have this preconceived notion of it being unsafe, then they would go on the street, then it would actually be safer because there would be more people on the street, Safe.
Right. I guess you do that with maybe lighting, cameras, because then some groups like cameras.
Yeah, it may be just those little things in an urban space that would make it feel more safe, would draw more people there, and then the end, like, overall, then it would become safer,
Yeah, but then I guess the question then also is, do anti-homeless benches, I don't really like seeing homeless people, I must say. Like, there's also a level of, homeless people do also give a sense of feeling of unsafety, because it's often people with a troubled past. Yeah. So isn't then also homeless benches a a form of safety?
No, can we not want to go there?
It is a very controversial.
No, I mean,
my question is slightly controversial, maybe.
no, it is controversial, but it's also, it's not like, oh, we should. You're not saying, oh, let's just banish all the homeless people to the outskirts or something like this. Like
there should not be any homeless people. Everybody should have a house.
We need to work as a society to have systems that prevent that in the first place. But like just isolating like anti-homeless architecture or urban design, is that inherently bad for overall safety?
Yeah.
I don't know.
At the end of the day, there's a reason we have anti-homeless spikes. Of course, one of the reasons is we don't have a social system that will support them, and we're kind of saying fuck you to homeless people.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side, it is because people don't want homeless. They don't want to see the problem. They don't want to see it.
But it's also
and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, but it's not the solution. You cannot just like solve the problem. Yeah, that's the thing. It's a system problem rather than like, oh, let's make them. Let's just isolate them so we don't see them. So the problem is not there. It's a bit stupid.
But then, of course, aren't lights and cameras the same? It's not. It's solving the solution now, not actually.
Is it just like putting a Band-Aid on it? Does it get to the root of the problem of like gendered urban experiences? Does that actually like solve the main problem, or is it just like a quick fix, a little Band-Aid on top to make it slightly better? You know,
like I do get it's a system problem again. Patriarchy, we live in capitalist community. It's just like something machine, you know, it's hard to fight it, but at least by again, that's what I want to do, make the people aware, make them more conscious about their behavior, even though they're unconsciously like again being loud, you know, you're having fun, you're like, I get that, go out, it's fine, but like be aware that you being loud can be read by someone as a threat.
Like at the end of the day, I guess education is the solution.
Yeah, I think.
But yeah, like also I think cameras and lights are like, we can't be bothered to educate them, so we just put down some cameras and some lights to okay, this I phrase it in a very extreme way now, but like because we haven't solved the problem.
But at the root of it, that's not like
yeah,
that's not an urban design problem. That's a
I see,
that's a global
that's a global societal issue.
Thing, yeah.
Which then again raises the question: can we, as urban planners, affect this?
I mean, I think yes. Like we can. I mean, I don't really know. Again, I mean, I don't do SPD, so not really my job.
Yeah, wait, Timo. Actually, can we talk like can we? Why the question is just addressed to two women in this podcast? Yeah, you know,
we don't have planning courses.
We're kind of like, you know, suffering.
I'm the only SPD student here. I think so too. Like through designs, you can, but I think that comes down to community, to creating community, to creating that community that will help you on the street and that will teach you to please don't scream at this woman in the middle of the night.
Right. Yes.
Although this episode is very little banter, but a lot of urban, I guess. We need to get a more banter one later. Thank you for listening. And if you want to read more about what we discussed today, then please read the articles on our website. They should be out when this is published. There's also a couple of really good books about feminism and the urban environment. And I hope you enjoyed. So see you next time. I'm sitting here with two women, and we're going to discuss... No, I'm sorry.
I found two women walking alone at night on the street, and I dragged them into a podcast studio.
Welcome to my basement. Today... No.
Wait. That's so